The complete story of Prophet Solomon from birth to death. The story of Prophet Sulaiman alaihissalam. Prophet Sulaiman was one of the sons of Prophet David. Since he was a child aged 11 years, he has shown signs of intelligence, brain sharpness, intelligence and thoroughness in considering and making decisions. Prophet Sulaiman ajuri when David, his father, occupied the throne of the Bani Israel kingdom, he always accompanied him in every court session held to deal with cases of disputes that occurred in society. He was deliberately taken by David. His father attended court hearings and partnered with him in handling royal affairs to train him and prepare him as the crown prince who would replace him to lead the kingdom, when the time came when he had to fulfill the divine call to leave this mortal world. And indeed Solomon is the smartest among his fellow brothers who are even older than him. An event that shows his intelligence and sharpness of mind occurred at one of the court hearings he attended. During the trial, two people came to complain asking the Prophet David to try their disputed case, namely that one of the two men's plantations had been entered by the goats of his friend's livestock at night, which resulted in the destruction of his yard which he had cared for so long that it was close to harvest time. The friend who was being complained about acknowledged the truth of his friend's complaint and that it was indeed his livestock that destroyed his friend's garden and yard. In the case of the dispute, David decided that as compensation for the loss suffered by the owner of the garden due to the destruction of his neighbor's goats, the owner of the goats must surrender his pets to the owner of the garden as compensation for his failure to look after his livestock. However, Solomon, who heard the decision handed down by his father, which he felt was not quite right, said to the father, "O my father, according to my judgment, the decision should read like this: to the owner of the yard whose crops have perished, the livestock of his neighbors are handed over to be cared for, harvested and used for their own needs, while the wood that has been destroyed is handed over to the neighbor who owns the farm to be restored and cared for until it returns to its original state, then each receives his property back, so that in this way neither party gains or loses more than as it should." The decision proposed by Sulaiman was well received by the two people who sued and were welcomed by the people who attended the trial with a sense of admiration for Sulaiman's intelligence despite being young, had shown maturity in thinking and the courage to give birth to opinions even though they were not in accordance with his father's opinion. This event is the beginning of the life history of Prophet Sulaiman, which is full of prophetic miracles and God's grace bestowed on him and his father Prophet David. Prophet Sulaiman occupying the throne. His father's kingdom since he was young. Solomon had been prepared by David to replace him to occupy the throne of the Bani Israel kingdom. Sulaiman's brother, Absalom, did not allow himself to be overtaken by his younger brother. He thinks that he should be the crown prince and not his younger brother who is physically weaker and younger and doesn't have much life experience like him. Because he held a grudge against his father who according to his opinion was unfair and had violated his rights as the first heir to the throne of the Bani Israel kingdom. Absalom was determined to rebel against his father and would fight tooth and nail to wrest power from his father or brother at whatever cost he had to achieve that goal. And as a preparation for his plan of rebellion, from a distance he tried to approach the people, showing affection and love for them to help solve the problems they faced and unite them under his influence and leadership. It was not uncommon for him to expand his influence, standing at the door of the palace intercepting people who came to appear before the king and handled the problems they asked for resolution himself. Feeling that his influence had spread among the people of Bani Israel and that he had won the hearts of most of them, Absalom considered that the time had come to carry out his plan of usurpation of power and take power from his father's hands by force. Then he spread his spies all over the country to incite the people and gave a sign to the supporters of his plan, that if they heard the sound of a trumpet, they must immediately gather around him. Then announced his appointment as king of the Bani Israel, replacing his father David. Solomon's power over Jinn and other creatures. Prophet Sulaiman, who had full power over the kingdom of the Bani Israel which was expanding and widening, Allah had subjected him to other creatures, namely the jinn of the wind and the birds, all of which were under his orders to do what he wanted and carried out all his commands. Besides that, Allah also gave him a gift in the form of flowing copper liquid from underground to be used for construction works of buildings, making plates as big as pools of water, pots that remained on the stove which was done by his jinn troops. As one of the miracles given by Allah to Solomon is his ability to grasp the meaning contained in the voices of animals, and conversely the animals can also understand what he commands and says. Thus, when Prophet Sulaiman traveled in a large caravan consisting of humans, jinn and other animals heading to a place called Ascalon, he passed through a valley called the Ant Valley. There he heard an ant saying to his friends, "O ants, enter all of you into your nest, so that you are safe and not be crushed by Solomon and his soldiers without him realizing it and on purpose." Prophet Sulaiman smiled and laughed at the sound of the ants. The frightened one. He told this to his followers while thanking Allah for his grace that made him able to hear and catch the meaning contained in the ant's voice. He was amazed that even animals understood that Allah's prophets would not disturb anything beings intentionally and consciously. Prophet Sulaiman and Queen Balqis. After Prophet Sulaiman woke Beit al-Maqdis and performed the pilgrimage according to his vow, he continued his journey to Yemen. Arriving in Sana'a, the capital city of Yemen, he summoned a hudhud, a type of woodpecker, to be told to look for water sources in this dry, barren place. It turned out that the hudhud bird he had called was not in the area of the bird which was always in place to carry out the duties and orders of Prophet Sulaiman. Prophet Sulaiman was angry and threatened to teach the absent hudhud bird if he came without any real reason or age. Said the hudhud bird, which perched in front of Solomon while bowing its head in fear, "I have made a reconnaissance flight and found something very important for your majesty to know. I have found a large and luxurious kingdom in the land of Saba which is controlled and ruled by a queen. I saw a queen sitting on a magnificent throne studded with sparkling jewels. I saw that the queen and her people did not know God, the creator of the universe, who had bestowed upon them the enjoyment and happiness of life. They do not worship and prostrate to him, but to the sun. They prostrate to him at sunrise and sunset. They have been led astray by the devil from the straight and true path." Sulaiman said to Hudhud, "Okay, this time I will forgive your sins because of the news that you brought, which I consider important to pay attention to, and to validate the truth of your news. Take this letter of mine to Saba and throw it into the queen's palace that you mean, then return as soon as possible, while we await further developments how the queen of Saba will respond to this letter of mine." Hudhud flew back to Saba, and arriving at the royal palace of Saba, Prophet Sulaiman's letter was thrown right in front of Queen Balqis, who was sitting majestically on her throne. She was surprised to see a letter fall from the air right in front of her face. She then raised her head to look up, wanting to know where the letter came from and who was the one who was disrespectfully throwing it right in front of her. Then the queen took the letter, opened it and read its contents, which read, "In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, this letter is from me, Solomon. Do not be arrogant towards me and think yourself higher than me. Come to me, surrender yourself. O my Lord Queen, we are sons who are raised and educated to fight and not to become expert thinkers or designers who are worthy of giving you consideration or advice. We leave it to you to make decisions that will bring good to the kingdom, and we will obey and carry out all your orders and decisions without hesitation. We will not be afraid to face any threat from anywhere to protect your safety and the safety of your kingdom." Queen Balqis replied, "I get the impression from your description that you prioritize violence, and if necessary you will not be afraid to enter the battlefield against enemies who will invade. I am very grateful for your loyalty to the kingdom and your willingness to risk your life to protect my safety and the safety of my kingdom. However, I am not alone with you all. In my opinion, it is wiser if we take the path of peace and avoid violence and war. Very sad. They will destroy all buildings, enslave the people and seize all the property and heritage of our ancestors. Such a thing is a natural result of every war experienced by human history from time to time. So facing Sulaiman's letter containing the threat, I will try to soften his heart by sending a royal gift which will consist of valuable and high-quality items that can dazzle his heart and dazzle his eyes, and I will see how he responds and reacts to my gift and how he accepts my envoy in his palace." 6.